Okay, let's get started.
Okay.
Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity to be here to study your word and to learn from it. Help us to understand what was going on at the time and help us to understand what it means, the stories mean to us in our lives today. We ask this in your name. Amen. Now, from last time, the first question is, how big was the group that left Egypt? How many were there?
600,000?
600,000.
I guess the right number.
When we talk about the map in a few minutes, think about moving 600,000 people where they went. All right.
And you're gonna understand why they break up into groups. Like, okay, you're in charge of this group.
Well, in the movie they had these standards, and each tribe was supposed to be following whoever was carrying the standards. So this poor person is carrying their home possessions and everything else, and carrying this thing ahead of everybody, and it's tall so you can see it. And that may not have been fun. Okay, how are the Israelites protected from the Egyptian army?
He took a swim.
No, what did God do?
Yeah, pillars, and that was, and then he made him swim. All right, we have to, now, I want you to pick up the map that I handed you, so you can get some perspective on what's going on here. First of all, if you look at where the red line ends, up at the top, that's where they're supposed to be going. Now take a look at the route they took to get there.
And
Why didn't they go straight?
like an airplane, they looped.
There were a couple of reasons why that we talked about, why they didn't go straight. Anybody remember what they were?
I think some of it has to do with Egypt controlled here, different things that they had to watch where they went for
There are a lot of
right people.
warring tribes that they.
Yeah.
And avoid some of
You
that.
notice right next to where the line starts, it says the way of the Philistines?
Yeah.
Remember it said in the scriptures, God didn't want them to go that way because they would end up fighting the Philistines?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. Also, look at down towards the bottom, after they part the Red Sea, there's a Mount Al-Lors there. You see it?
I'm looking.
It also says Mount Sinai or Horeb, yes. Okay.
Okay.
Remember,
Okay.
God told Moses that he was to bring the people to worship him on his holy mountain. And that's where the holy mountain is.
Yeah.
So it's nowhere near where they're going. So keep that in mind, that they are going the entire, across the Gulf there, the entire length of Egypt, and then turning around and heading north. So let's talk about 600,000 people. The average, according to Tommy Lee Jones, the average person, depending upon their infirmities, can walk 4.5 miles a day. So I want every hen house, outhouse, you know. So 600,000 people, if they can move 4 to 10 miles a day, and then they have to stop and camp. 4 to 10 miles, stop and camp. 4 to 10 miles, stop and camp. Look at how far they had to go just to get to cross the Red Sea. That is a long, long trek. Now, keep in mind that it took them, we will find out, a long time to get all the way up to the end. A long time, because they were naughty. So you can imagine how much
Problems came up.
how much fun it was to keep 600,000 people happy, along with animals and everything else, and walking that entire distance. And remember, we heard about the Amorites and the Moabites, and you see right towards the end there, you can see where they are at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the land of the Amorites and the Moabites and whoever else was living there. And notice it stops at Jericho.
Yep. Mm.
It stops at Jericho because, made a good song.
Isn't that kind of where Moses has to stay and they go on or something?
Yeah, he couldn't cross the
Mm-hmm.
river up at the top there. So Joshua said, Jericho, Jericho. Yeah, so anyway, that's the whole story there. Keep this around as we talk about this, because it does have some of the towns and places marked on here that we'll come across in the text. Also, that keep in mind too. Remember in the movie when Moses took off and he walked through this sandy desert and everything? That's where they were going. Notice what it says there, and I guess it's, I don't know what color that is. It's like a yellow or a golden
I
rock.
have trouble
So
saying that color.
I have a couple of seeing it too, but that's the wilderness of Egypt. So he's taken 600,000 people through the wilderness at 4 to 10 miles a day. That ain't a whole lot of fun, as we were about to see.
This place here, Petra, that was named Petra after Jesus, or was that named Petra before?
Probably before.
That means Peter.
Means what?
Peter, Petra means Peter. That's what I wondered.
But anyway, this gives you
So how many
some.
miles was it? We don't know that.
Well, it's let's put it this way. You'll find out it took 40 years for them to get there.
Oh, that's it.
40 years. Now, in the Bible, 40 years means a very long time.
So it may not be 40 years.
Yeah, it may not be 40 exactly, but it was a very long time. So he had to keep these people under control all the way around here. Notice they backtracked at one point. And
Kind of here,
Yeah.
something in back. Okay.
so keep that in mind. There were a lot of things that were not in the movie that we're going to be discussing now that occurred that made them make this trip because God was not happy with them. And we're going to see a couple today where God was not happy with them and what the reaction was. Now, I am not going to make us read the Song of the Israelites. That's, once I get the music for that, we can sing it together. But that's most of chapter 15. However, would somebody like to read chapter 15, verses 22 to 27?
Okay, 22, 57.
It's on page 75.
All right, then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them. He said, "If you listen carefully to the words of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water.
Stop and think for a second. 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and there's 600,000 of them. The line at the spring must have been a very, very long one.
And what were the palm trees for? Did they have something on them to eat, or were they just
Shade.
shades? Yeah.
Shade mostly. So, you know, we would call that an oasis. So they came there and there's 600,000 of them. I mean, Cleveland isn't that big, people-wise. So, I don't know what the density per square mile was, but I bet it was pretty high. So a lot of people are camping out there, and, you know, some probably had tents, some didn't, who knows? So it was nothing else but a rabble at this point. So notice what happens. Where is the water? Told you I'd take care. Where's the water? So here, that was strike one. Okay? Remember what he tells them there. If you listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you.
Who heals you?
Stop and think. He's telling them, hey, I'm in charge of this entourage here. You go where I send you. And if you don't like it, this is what might happen to you. So that's strike one. Then it gets even more interesting. Then they have a problem with food. So I would like somebody to read Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 to 12.
I'll read it. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day they are to prepare what they are to bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that we should grumble against? Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening, and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God.
Didn't listen the first time, did they? So they grumbled again. Like I said, it would be kind of hard to keep 600,000 people happy. And so now they're complaining about food. So they are going to get bread when?
In the morning.
In the morning. And they're going to get what at night?
Meat at night.
Meat at night. Sounds like a pretty good deal. They don't have to go buy it or anything. It's just going to show up. However, there's some catches that come into play here. Again, we talk about the grumbling and all these other things. And the people are kind of, bail us out once, let's make sure that he bails us out the second time. So I would like someone to read Exodus 16, 13 to 26.
That evening, quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Each one is to gather as much as he needs. Take it. What's that, omer, for each person you have in your tent?" The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the... What's an omer?
According to the footnote, it's about 4 quarts.
Okay. Omer. He who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as he needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be the day of rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be not any." Oh, God.
Well, in some ways, when you grow up in the country and learn things, everything has a purpose. So if there was some left over that's not supposed to be ate by people, that's left for the birds or the soil or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way it should work. I mean, most people feed bread to the birds. The only problem is now the birds keep coming looking for the bread, even if you don't give it to them. But that is the way it is. I mean, Jesus tells the story about how the woman says that even the dogs get the crumbs from the table. Well, the lesson here is, I've taken care of you. I don't want any of you to be greedy.
He wants them to listen to him.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Sort of
He gave him a command.
Yeah.
He doesn't want him to be greedy. So anybody who is, he's going to make the most vile way of getting back to them. I mean, think about that. What could be worse? And you're in a desert, so it's not like you can throw them out a window or something. You know, it's.
I'd say when I was a child, I always remember. I paid attention. We had a barn cat, and it decided to abandon its kittens and leave them. So the father was like, "I'm going to find that cat," because those kittens didn't know what to do, and they were eaten by maggots.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it all works together.
Yeah.
You don't abandon your babies.
I never would have made it. I'm a city person. Never would have made it.
Okay. So now on the 7th day, again, God has told them precisely what to do. Moses has told them precisely what to do. But human nature says nobody pays attention to that because they're smarter than old, Moses is. They know what to do. And the consequences are, shall we say, a little nasty. So would somebody like to read Exodus 16, 27 to 33?
Okay. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where he is on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. People of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. take an over of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the desert when I brought you out of Egypt. So Moses said to Aaron, take the jar and put an over of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come.
Well,
And that will never spoil.
well, yeah, because,
It's gotta be seen.
because God said, this is what you're going to do. So again, 3 times the people have not listened. And now God is starting to get smart. He's going after Moses, saying, listen,
You're the boss.
you're the boss, make sure this happens. Now, we will find out later. One of Moses' biggest problems was he wanted to be the boss of everything. Himself. And he found out there's only 24 hours in a day. So we'll learn who solves this problem for him a little later on. Now, verse 34 says, as the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna in front of the testimony, that it might be kept. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. 40 years. Moses is in charge of this entourage of 600,000 people for 40 years. Now, in the Bible, 40 years is also a code word for the long time. So, presumably, they meant 40 years. But sometimes when they say 40 years, they just mean an awful long time. So,
You think about it, if it was 40 years, then the children that went had all grown up.
well, that, we're going to find that there was a reason for that.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at the map, it says, it talks about how they got to where they were. Oh, here it is. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, which is Mount Sinai, down there. And it took them the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had come out of Egypt. So it took them 2 months and 15 days to go all the way to here. And it took 39 years to do the rest of it. So think about that. Moses has got all of these people, yelling and screaming and hollering and got problems with this and problems with that. And, a lot of people have a hard time being a principal of a high school of 400, let alone 600,000. So, and not only that, Moses is caught in the middle. He's got the people yelling at him on one side, and he's got God wondering why in the heck he isn't doing what he's been told on the other side. So there is absolutely no reason why Moses' beard didn't turn white. I'm surprised it took him that long. But when you look at it that way, the Exodus becomes a very, very major, shall we say, endeavor. 4 to 10 miles a day for 39 years. Now, I assume they would have to camp out and rest somewhere along the way every so often, probably where there was water. But still, 600,000 people. So that gives you some perspective as to what was happening here.
And over there is Jerusalem.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They had to take some 39 years to get from one side of Mount Sinai to Jericho. You could probably walk it, and knowing you folks with such good legs, you could probably walk it in a month or two. But so obviously something is going to happen that is going to require them to take that particular route. Okay, chapter 17, I will read. Here is another case where the people have been told, do what I tell you, everything's under control, and something occurs. Okay? The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you not put the Lord to the test? But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst? Have we heard this before? Mm-hmm. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me. The Lord answers Moses, walk on ahead of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock of Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this, and in the light of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not?
You see, you'd think that these things that God did, that the people would see them and say, wow, this is really an amazing God. We can do anything with this God. But I guess they get used to it. Or else they don't understand. Maybe like, oh, there's all kinds of gods. No big deal.
Well, let's put it this way. It's when we first moved into our house, we got a gift from Linda's sister-in-law's mother. It was a bird feeder. And they told us that if you feed the birds, you can't stop doing it, because otherwise they will die. You know, they are used to coming and seeing there's food in this thing. And it was amazing because they were sloppy. And all these birds would hang on the fence. And then when a perch would become available, another one would fly up. And there's all these seed on the ground. They must have wasted more than they ate. But that's what they tell you. You can't stop because birds are stupid. Well, I'm not saying the people were stupid, but in reality, whose needs did they care about?
You'd think that God would be so powerful, they'd see that.
Well, whose needs did they really care about?
Their own.
Their own.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just keep taking care of me. Maslow had this, hierarchical diagram that showed how needs were met. And need for survival was number one. And once you have a need for survival, then you start doing things like thinking and all these other things, and taking education, and taking up hobbies and all these kinds of things.
And then later in Exodus, if I remember right, there was something about, well, the people are getting tired of manna, they want something with a different flavor.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Well, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the point I'm making is that, these people were at the lowest level of Maslow. And all they cared about was what's going to happen tomorrow. And they have already seen things you and I will never see.
Yeah, amazing.
But this is where we inherited it. Everybody complains now. This is where they got it from.
I mean, seriously, we have never seen manna fall from the sky or quails show up or any of those kinds of things. We've never seen that. They did.
Yeah.
And it
Amazed.
still did not make them happy. So now they're moving along, and You know, Horeb is down by the, you know, down Sinai there. They're on there, so they're getting pretty close to where God's holy mountain was. And so Moses has to hit a rock, and water comes out of it that's never been there before. How much more convincing do these people need? Have you ever seen anybody walk up the street and hit a rock and all of a sudden water appears?
In Pennsylvania, you see rocks with water coming down.
Right, I understand that, but I'm saying just when nothing is happening, bam, oh, here it is.
Yeah.
I mean, remember the whole theory behind the divining rod?
Yeah.
Supposedly it would tell you where the water is. I don't know if those things actually worked or not, probably not, but I bet somebody sold an awful lot of them though.
Well, my grandparents, they had people who did that, who came in and did that for you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they came with their thing and they went around and looked for water for you.
Did they ever find it?
I don't know, I don't think, like you say, I think most people couldn't do it, but there were a few who were really,
Obvious.
maybe.
Early scams.
Well,
Early scam.
just remember they had these elixirs that they sold that would cure
Oh, I know, you
everything.
see that.
Yeah, 1930s, 40s, you know,
Yeah,
especially.
but anyway, think about this. You know, the water comes out of a rock out of nowhere. To give you an idea how hard that is, my great-grandparents lived on a property that was on the side of a mountain, and they could not drill a well that would reach water. And they had about 6 different holes there. The way they got their water, there was no city water. The way they got their water, there was a spring way on the edge of the property, maybe a block and a half away from the house. And this guy was a machinist engineering type. And what he did is he put a retention pan over there and he put a float in it. And he had a Model T engine. And when the float reached a certain level, the engine would turn on, send the water down the pipes and pressurize the pipes.
Sounds like your toilet, or the floater.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
See? And only he could figure out how to put a Model T engine back there, because they were probably pretty available then. And he'd have to go back every once in a while and put gas in it. But that's how the house got it. And this is 1960. This house still was getting its water that way.
Oh, my God.
And see, and you also gotta remember too, like, my grandparents had a well dug in 1970. They didn't do it right, it was very salty water. My other grandparents' home, there's lots of sulfur in the water. You couldn't always get the water just right, you had to really know how to dig right.
Yeah, well water usually does smell like.
Yeah, those of us who have grown up on city water
Yeah,
have a
it's
hard time
terrible, it's
with well.
terrible.
My parents had pretty good well water, it was, tasted good and everything, but not
No.
everybody did.
When we went camping at Pokagon in Indiana, they had well water coming out of pumps. But there was one spring, and we would drive all the way over there and fill our jars, because the spring water was as clear and as clean as you could possibly have.
But if you're not used to well water.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Chicago. Why would we be used to
I was
well
gonna say, I'm a
water?
city person, and well water is like.
And when I went to college, the one teacher said, let's do an experiment. There's well water and there's city water. See if you can tell the difference. And
Okay.
most people, if they're used to well water, they like the best. If they're used to the city water, they like the best.
So keep that in mind here, that they're in the middle of nowhere, rocks everywhere, and all of a sudden water appears. You'd think that would convince them.
Yeah,
Now,
great God.
now think about this too. There's 600,000 of them, so there has to be an awful lot of water coming out of that rock to water up a crowd that size. Let's assume that every person drinks a gallon. There's 600,000 gallons right there before you, and that doesn't even count cooking and I don't know if they washed clothes or whatever they did. But, something that big should have made an impression on you.
And you can see why, in some ways, even back before, God gave them rules about the meat and everything else, because you had to know how to cook your meat right and so on, or you were gonna have problems.
So, now, the Israelites also had an army. that they had to use every once in a while. Chapter 17, verse 8. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "We've heard that man's name before, haven't we? Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand up the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. Anybody know what happened next?
They held up his hands.
Yeah. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side and one on the other, so his hands remained steady until the sun set. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, making sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out of the memory of the Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, for hands were lifted up to the throne of the Lord. The Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to
Can you
generation.
imagine kind of like a comedy movie?
Well,
Yeah, you can do it.
do you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon when he comes out dressed as the conductor Leopold, and the soloist is sweating like crazy? Okay, the guy's, he's sweating and his clothes are coming off. And as long as he held his hand up, the guy had to sing. So, it turns out the character Bugs Bunny was playing was a real person, Leopold Stokowski, who was somewhat of a prima donna. But anyway, so that is one of the stories you learn in Sunday school. We all had to draw the picture of Moses and the sun up and holding that staff in the air, and they had to hold his hands up. I mean, stop and think. You're going to hold up a piece of wood like this for 12 hours. Most of us couldn't even do it 5 minutes, let alone 12 hours. And again, if that doesn't convince you, what else is there?
Yeah, they still, I need this, I need that. I'm not happy.
Listen to all this is something we've never seen. Now, it was after that the military got the idea that the leaders should be at the front somewhere where the men can see them. That was part of this story too. I mean, he was on the hill where all the people could see that his hands were in the air, you see. That's why it had to be a hill. Now, why the Amalekites didn't charge the hill and take care of it, I have no idea, but they didn't. And you're the historical buff. One of the reasons why so many officers per capita were killed in the Civil War than any other war this country ever fought was for that reason.
They were in the front of the line.
Yeah, they were in the front of the line on a horseback, most of them.
Yeah.
And they were easy targets.
But it's so different because like when we went to Gettysburg last year, they talk about stuff. Somebody would be fighting in the Civil War and their leg would have to be amputated. And then maybe a year later they were back fighting again. And today, when that happens, you're done. You can't be in the service any longer. These people are coming back to fight again.
Did you see the thing?
Whoa!
Did you see the thing about General Sickles?
Yeah.
General Sickles had his leg amputated. He had it stuffed and had it in his living room.
These people would come back and fight with
Yeah,
their legs.
he wasn't gone for very long. He was a general. He was a little bit of a wacko. But as a result, the Turner film doesn't mention him, even though he was a big player in Gettysburg. He was a little strange. But can you imagine walking into somebody's house and seeing a leg stuffed in a glass case in the living room? Almost as bad as Roy Rogers, you know, he had trigger stuffed in his living room. So anyway, you can see, folks, that the people they're a tough crowd.
To please.
Yeah, it's like everything they wanted or needed was provided in ways they had never seen before.
And yet,
Well, I don't know how, okay, that's nice. Now, what, as they used to say in music, what do you do for an encore? See, we're gonna find out that the continued behavior like this is one of the reasons why they took so long to get to where they were going. Renee is absolutely right. They wanted a whole generation of these people to die off before they got there. Because these were the people that were complaining and doing all of the other stuff and weren't listening. We'll hear about that in the next couple of sessions. In the meantime, thank you for coming, and thank you